Hello and welcome, everyone. We are so thrilled and excited to have you join us for today's webinar, From Data to Action, Evolving Wellbeing Strategies for 2025. My name is Christina, and on behalf of Myosh, I am absolutely thrilled to be your host for this session. Now, we know that data drives meaningful change, but how can organisations truly leverage it to elevate employee wellbeing beyond that checkbox approach? Well, that's exactly what we'll be diving into today. Today, I am so excited to introduce your speaker, Greg Stark, founder and director of Better Being. Greg is an expert in workplace wellbeing and has worked with some of the biggest brands to implement data-driven strategies that improve employee health, engagement, and performance. Today, Greg will be unveiling exclusive insights from Better Being's latest Wellbeing Index, revealing key trends shaping 2025, the real cost of inaction, and most importantly, how you can turn insight into impact. Now, I'd absolutely love it if you could all utilize this session and be as interactive as possible. So use that chat box or the Q&A box to ask questions, share insights, or drop your thoughts throughout the presentation. We'll have a few questions, activities, and polls thrown up throughout. So please participate. Now, I won't keep yapping on any longer, and I will hand you over to Greg.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you everyone for joining today. It's great to be back here. We love hosting these sessions on Myosh. For some of you may have met us before. For those that are new, I'm Greg Stark, founder and director of Better Being. I started my career working with elite athletes in high performance environments, in how do we help them turn up and perform as their best self. And over the last 10, 15 years, have been working with organisations in how do we help to proactively help people in their well-being, reduce risk, increase retention and retain really good talent. And as Christina mentioned, we work with some amazing organisations, both locally and globally, brands such as Coca-Cola, Commonwealth Bank, Origin Energy, just to name a few. As Christina also mentioned, we'd love to keep today as interactive as possible. So it's not just me talking at you for the 45 minutes, an hour ahead. But to get a lot of your thoughts and feedback and insights and try and problem solve some of those things on the call today. So I guess to start off with, if you could jump in the comments section and let us know either what is your biggest workplace wellbeing challenge right now, and the other thing that we're going to do shortly is what were the biggest trends that you noticed in employee wellbeing in 2024. So looking back last year before we start to look forward. Why those responses are coming through, I guess as an overview today, we're going to talk about why data-driven wellbeing strategies matter, how the workplace is changing and evolving when it comes to wellbeing, and I guess what is that next phase that we're going to see come through over the next 12 months. And again, that hopefully there's something you can take out of today and look to implement in your business off the back of it. But to start off with, I thought I'd start with a bit of a magic trick. If we like to call it that. It's going to require you to put your thinking caps on for just a couple of minutes. I want you to start off by thinking of a number between 1 and 10. Don't share that number, but just think about a number between 1 and 10. Now take that number and multiply it by 9. You should get that as a 2-digit number. I want you to add those digits together. So you've added those digits together. I want you to take away 5. Take away 5 from that number. We're now going to convert that number to a letter. So if, for instance, that letter correlates to the number of the alphabet. So 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, so on and so forth. Now you should have a letter. I want you to think of a country that starts with that letter. First country that comes to mind. Next, I want you to take the second letter of that country and think of an animal. Now you've got that animal. I want you to take the second letter of that animal and think of a vegetable. So you're probably thinking about a Danish elephant eating lettuce. Again, give me a little high five or a thumbs up if that was the case, or a thumbs down if that wasn't the case. Again, a fancy numbers magic trick. But I guess the reason I got you to do that little simple activity is that people love numbers. They love data because they feel that numbers don't lie. But numbers do a lot more than just tell us what we want to hear. Numbers and data should raise more questions than it should give answers. So again, I guess off the course of today, I want you to think about how can you proactively use data rather than reactively use it to limit risk, but actually how can we use it to maximize productivity, retain the best talent, and help your people perform the best they can within the workplace. Christina, what have we got coming through in the chat around challenges, trends, and
nobody has actually written anything. Nobody has popped anything in there. So can somebody just write something and just let me know whether they can actually see my question pop into the chat box? Oh, amazing. We've got one. Lovely. Okay, perfect. So Paige, thank you so much for kicking everybody off. Challenge, the too busy notion. It's challenging to get people to take the time out of their day to attend wellbeing workshops.
Yeah.
Shirley, I feel this in my soul. Continue to work from home while sick. Burnout.
Yeah.
Building relationships and vulnerability. Stress. Being unsupported. I'm going to throw one in there, and one of my challenges is my inability to feel I can say no.
Great. They're coming in thick and fast. That's good.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for sharing those, and thank you, Christina. Again, we'd probably see that a lot of these are probably interconnected and related. A lot of them are timeless challenges. Again, not having the time to commit to wellbeing. If we look at things like the stress and the inability to say no can lead to stress, which ultimately leads to burnout. But I guess to hopefully summarize some of these things, when we reflected back on, I guess, the trends of 2024, some of the things within the industry that we identified as sort of key things that happened over the course of the last 12 months, there was definitely, a much stronger focus on mental health and psychosocial safety with the changes in legislation. We found a lot of organisations were going through their psychosocial risk assessment pieces. And again, we're going to talk about now going into 2025 that a lot of those organisations now are looking at what can we do to not only manage risk, but proactively, which is a part of the legislation, how do we proactively encourage better wellbeing practices within people and also businesses. And again, there's going to be a lot of things that we talk about. Some of those are work design factors, some of those are human factors, and how do we bring best practice of both those things together. One of the other legislation things that came in is the right to disconnect. So again, some of these challenges of working from home, working till you're sick, working till you're burnt out. Again, there's been a big shift in some of those practices and what does that mean for work. And I guess this flows on to the next part of the return to office mandates, that again, there was some data coming through around, productivity and even well-being, that perhaps working from home isn't the best solution for businesses, and it's not possible for all roles, but also I guess the employee resistance to that change, that no one likes changing, particularly when you've had a taste of what that feels like. And again, what does that look like heading into 2025 and some of the challenges that were faced there. And one of the other ones was obviously globally, there was rising operational costs, economic uncertainty. Felt like there was probably a bit of pullback or hesitancy within wellbeing programs in terms of spending. Looking very much at reducing costs in that basis, but heading into 2025, looking at things in terms of now looking a lot more optimistic and how can we maximise our wellbeing budgets to get the biggest impact is definitely a lot more of the conversations we're having now. Again, if there's any others that we've missed there, we'd love to hear from you in the comments section and share those at some point. But I imagine that some or all of these might be experienced within your business over the last year. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the data that we've collected across all our clients over the last 12 months. And again, what does that mean and how do we use that to create action and programs? So when we look at data, again, as a question for you to go into the comment section there, what data do you look at within your workplace? And what are the challenges you face when it comes to collecting that data? What data do you look at regularly? And what are the challenges you face with that data? Would love to hear those in the comments section and come to those shortly. Always love this meme. I think the biggest thing when it comes to data is why are we collecting that data in the first place? And I think a lot of it is about we want to understand our people more and what do they want. But I think the challenge, as you can see with the notebook, is often we don't know what we want. So it's very hard to tell you what we want. So again, when we look at data, what is the story that the data is telling us, so we can work out maybe what supports and programs and ways that we can then improve those outcomes for people. Obviously, data can also help to understand the challenges, understand the risks of the business, but more importantly, should be used in creating those solutions. Again, depending on your role and purpose of tuning in today, we find that probably HR leaders focus a little bit more on metrics around, say, turnover rate and employee retention, a bit more on burnout and workload, whether that's absenteeism, overtime, EAP usage, and culture and leadership. In terms of management effectiveness and again that ability of managing workload from the HR perspective, from safety leaders, a bit more around near misses and hazard reduction, hazard identification reports. Lost time injuries is always one that is a common metric. Workers' comp claims and employee assistance programs as well tend to be common measures that people have. Is there any other ones in there, Christina, coming through in the chat around what are the metrics that people use and what are some of the challenges?
We've got change of mindset and workplace incidents, workers' comp, changes in mindset and lack of reporting. Let me know if you want me to repeat any of those.
They're all very good. Again, I'd be interested in change of mindset and what is meant by change of mindset is in being a challenge in that as a directive, you've been told to measure something and then there's a change, or how do we change the mindset of employees as well? So if you can, in the comments, it'd be great to hear a little bit more about that. But it sounds like most of the ones that people look at, we've sort of identified there. If you attended our previous webinar with Mosh, we were speaking a little bit around lead and lag indicators. The challenge with a lot of these indicators here, they're lag indicators. The time for intervention has already come and gone. And what we're doing is essentially a lot of the time just plotting the decline in health and well-being of people over time. So it's really important to also have indicators that can help organisations to proactively manage well-being, to identify changes in behaviour that might be leading to certain issues further down the line, that if they're not addressed, how can we help support employees in giving them what they need and understanding what they want, but also doing it in a really proactive manner. Was there any further?
Just to elaborate on the change of mindset, they've written to change from reactive safety culture to a compliant safety culture.
Yeah.
Another mention of turnover and retention. For contractor workers, it's difficult to get a reasonable data. And another one is indicators. Work as done interaction, learning, confirming critical controls are in place.
Yeah, perfect. Again, yeah, a lot of those aspects around critical controls and hazard identification and those sort of things are essential parts of wellbeing design, workplace wellbeing design and practices. And again, for the purpose of today, we're really focusing in on how we get that shift from a reactive mindset when it comes to supporting employees with their wellbeing to how do we make this a much more proactive experience for you as a business and also for the people within the business. So again, the way we do that within Better Being, we utilise a tool which we've created called the Wellbeing Index. Now, the Wellbeing Index is an evidence-based assessment tool that measures individual mindset, movement, nutrition, recovery. We've identified those as the 4 pillars of performance when it comes to helping an individual optimize their well-being. And again, all these challenges that you've mentioned earlier probably fall under those different banners in different ways. One of the key differentials within our Wellbeing Index compared to how data might be typically extracted within an organisation is that it provides personalised insight for the individuals as well as data-driven risk analysis for the organisations. So again, that there's value at an individual level, and it's not just a case of asking the individual, give me data about our workplace. That again, we often get workplaces say that there's survey fatigue because there's so many different surveys around engagement and psychosocial risk and those sort of things, but they're all designed to give the business insight, but not actually offer a lot of value to the organisation. Once we're able to collect that data for an organisation, these insights then help them to pinpoint key risk areas, look at how they can help enhance health literacy and measure the impact of their wellbeing initiatives. Is the things they're doing actually creating change? And if we're able to have this targeted action approach, it becomes a much more powerful way to approach wellbeing within the workplace. I guess something that was interesting, and we're about to go into some of the stats off the back of our 2024 report that we found with the clients that we worked with, we were getting over the course of 12 months on average 2.7 submissions across organisations. So on average, people were submitting data voluntarily, not because they were obligated to or they were told to. They did it voluntarily at least every 3 months. So that gave us a really great insight to not just a point in time for employees, but actually start to see whether we're changing the health of wellbeing of employees over time. So as I said, that one of the great challenges that we get in terms of feedback from organisation is around survey fatigue. How do we get inputs, point in time? Again, if someone's having a bad day and we're asking them for feedback, their feedback's going to be very different compared to over time. And I think one of the biggest ones is also transparency. are employees actually giving us insights into their health and well-being, or is there a fear of either it will be used against them or no change will happen? Interesting bit of research. Again, we're happy to share this off the back of today, that 70% of workers overall say they are comfortable in sharing their personal health information with their employer in return for personal guidance in managing their health. They are happy to pass over their data and let you see the insights of their health and well-being if there's a return and value for them. This is a huge shift from 23 to 24. In 2023, only 53% of people said that they were happy to. So employees are more and more happy to share their health data with their organisations if there is going to be benefit to them. And this trend is increasing and growing. On your screens, you can see, I guess, some of the generational differences. Millennials are a lot happier and are probably, more comfortable with sharing data online, having come through a more, technology-based age of working. So again, this survey showed that 79% of millennials are happy to share their data. Gen Xers, 70% of them are happy to share their data. Baby boomers are probably a little bit more skeptical around sharing data, so that's at 56%. Further research has looked into this in terms of people wanting to share their data. They say that the key to it is clarity, transparency, and individual control over who has access to what data, when, and for how long are they. How long is the data used? Is widely regarded as essential prerequisites. So again, your employees want to know that there's a transparent use, that they have a degree of control over it, that there is benefit to them in order of you collecting this data. If that happens, they're happy to share and be transparent. So coming back to our Wellbeing Index, we make sure that there's benefit to the individual, not just the organisation. We give personalised recommendations in how they can improve their health and wellbeing, and we come in as a layer of trust between the employee and employer in how we report that data back, in terms of aggregating that data across groups and not exposing individuals within the business, so that that fear of how that data is utilised is removed. So I guess more importantly, one of the key purposes of today is to talk about some of the trends that we saw from 2024 and how we see this continuing to evolve into 2025. So 2024 compared to 2023, we saw our Wellbeing Index score increase by 3%. So 2023, it was 70%. This year, the overall Wellbeing Index score is 73%. This is aligned with other wellbeing metrics such as Gallup. Gallup also have their own wellbeing survey they do and look at employee health and wellbeing. They are up from 48% in 2023 to 53% in 2024. So I think, the main thing to be taken out of this is that this increased focus on health and wellbeing of employees is starting to get cut through. People are improving their habits, improving workplace design and workplace systems and processes and structures around a lot of that psychosocial risk assessment pieces are really starting to have an impact, and we're seeing a positive trajectory when it comes to overall wellbeing. If we broke it down into the individual components of our wellbeing survey, we can see we saw the biggest change in movement and in recovery pillars of wellbeing there. So again, there's still some work to do, and we'll go into some of the details around that. But overall, those two areas have improved the most, 20 compared to 24. Mindset has stayed pretty consistent, no change there, and a nutrition over time. Something we also brought in this year, we've also looked across some of our key industries. And if we look at probably our three biggest industries in terms of their Wellbeing Index scores, we found that in third place, we'll call it, was professional services. They registered 65% in their Wellbeing Index score. So again, predominantly a white collar population. We had a close to 50-50 split between white collar and blue collar type of roles. So again, it's not just very different challenges between those two working groups, but it's data across all forms of work. In second place, manufacturing with 75%, so slightly above the average Wellbeing Index score. And then the highest performing industry across the Wellbeing Index in 2024 was information media and telecoms. So again, some interesting insights. We're starting to benchmark across different businesses within the same industries to give organisations really good insights in terms of how they're supporting individuals in managing their health and wellbeing. Another thing to touch on that I missed earlier was around gender splits. It's pretty close to 50-50 in terms of the amount of data that we've collected over the last 12 months between the gender splits. And again, not a lot of variation overall in wellbeing index scores there. So if we dive a little bit deeper into some of the insights from 2024, and I guess the 4 key things that we picked up from the index, and again, it would be interesting to see whether these are being reflected within your. Well, again, jump in the comment section, let us know if this is reflective of what's happening in your workplace, or whether there's other things that you're seeing, or whether you have further questions. So the first thing we've noticed is health prioritisation is declining. So only 49% of employees prioritise their health. That's down from 67% in 2023. So again, I think a lot of these workplace practices, maybe some of these changes in where we do our work from, some of the questions we've got to start asking is, why is the need, or why do people feel they have less opportunity to prioritise their health? Again, it might come back to the concept of they're feeling too busy to take time out to focus on their health and well-being. Again, how do we shift those decisional balances with individuals so that they start to realise prioritising their health is a good thing for them and a good thing for those around them. The next thing that we're seeing is a rise in physical complaints. 46% of employees report physical discomfort as experiencing physical discomfort on a regular basis. And what we know about physical discomfort, it's often a precursor to workplace injuries and compensation claims. So again, I guess some of the questions being asked about that is that, has the increased focus on our psychological or psychosocial safety, had an impact on our physical injury risk and taken time and resources away from that? And do we need to keep the conversation going in supporting employees in overcoming physical pain and discomfort before it becomes a lost time injury or workers' comp claim? The next trend that we saw is burnout is creeping up. So employees working until they're burnt out increased by 2%. So again, a slight increase. Again, I feel, 2024 burnout was spoken about a lot. It was addressed a lot within workplaces. It's continuing to rise. Again, what strategies can we put into place to help people overcome that workload issue? And also, what can businesses do to better manage workload issue of employees so they're not getting to that point of feeling burnt out? And the last one being social connection is dropping. As I said, there's a lot of evidence and research around the loneliness epidemic coming up. We did get asked the question the other week, is the move to have people come back to the office, is that driven out of a need for businesses to be able to keep an eye on employees and make sure they're more productive, or is there a greater well-being motive behind it? Hard to say. It's probably a bit of both, but we know that social connection is declining. One of the ways that we can improve that is by coming into the office. The key thing is not coming into the office and being on a device for the whole day. You can do that from home, but actually, how are you coming into the office, connecting with your colleagues and feeling, part of an organisation, part of a business, to have people in your corner. How are we really building that social connection and not feeding into this loneliness epidemic? Christina, what other things are coming through in the comments section? Are these things that people are seeing as well? What other things have they got further questions on.
Yeah, so Colin has said generally, yes. We have a corporate health program which is helping to maintain focus on their health. They've had some really good news stories of illnesses diagnosed as part of the program. Colin, that sounds unreal. Like, that's really good news to hear that your work is actually prioritising those. Kayla's mentioned that she has definitely noticed the social connection dropping within the organisation. And Jess has said she's actually seeing all of those things happening. On my end, I would say our social connection is definitely dropping as well. We're a company that's all over the country, actually all over the world, and we often find that things can get misinterpreted or miscommunicated because everything's just on a screen, and it's not until you actually pick up a phone or go via Teams or reconnect with someone face to face that you actually understand tone and you understand like there is a connection there. So it's hard to keep that up. I would say that number 4 for us, definitely. Another one has been staff cheesed off with management, and also there is a lot of anger towards management.
Right. Again, these are all very common things that we hear from businesses. It's great that you're seeing these same trends in terms of reinforcing the data. But yeah, I mean, management, I think are working out a lot around what does wellbeing mean, what are some of these changes from legislation perspective mean to our businesses, how much are we responsible for our employees within the workplace. There's definitely a big shift in mentality of understanding that, work and life, the people that they are in their personal lives and their work life is integrated, and what people want from looking at a place to work is a place that prioritises wellbeing. So we are seeing a lot of that change at the execs level. Part of the challenge with that as well is there's also a lot more responsibility being put on those managers. And if we look at some of that burnout data, the area of the business that is burning out the fastest is in a lot of those leadership roles, because they're not only dealing with their own health and well-being, the performance of the business, but also that of their teams. And again, we've spoken about that in previous workshops and webinars around, how we can better support leaders in doing those roles and adapting to this changing world of well-being. Thank you for that, Christina, and for everyone who shared. So I guess the question then becomes, what is the real cost of some of these things, and how do we calculate that cost? We're going to launch a quick little poll on your screens now, just for you to, I guess, reflect on your own health and wellbeing. And these are just some examples of different types of questions that sit within our Wellbeing Index. Again, none of your responses are going to be shared personally. Again, it's just to see, I guess, the trends within the group that are online now, but also potentially have you reflect on yourself and your health practices. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to answer those questions. 3 really simple questions on the scale of 1 to 7. All right. Hopefully most people have inputted their answers. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. Again, it's a reflective task to generate self-awareness so that you can think about your behaviours in that case. But more importantly, get you thinking about the real cost of some of these things at an individual level, but also an organisational level. So question 1, you might have seen on your screens, I experience physical complaints such as muscle aches or joint pain, which compromises my ability to exercise for the remainder of the week. If you answered 3 or above for this question, pain and pain management is a big issue for you. According to systematic reviews and meta-analysis, For those who report frequent physical complaints, the effect of their ability to exercise and the risk of developing chronic conditions such as osteoarthritis and lower back pain increases by 1.6 to 2.3 times compared to those that experience fewer complaints. So rather than just looking at our lost time injury or workers' comp claims when it comes to those injuries, if we can help to identify the groups or even individuals within a business that might be experiencing physical pain and it hasn't got to that stage where they need time off work or workers' comp claims, we're saving the business significant money from that perspective, that those individuals with regular pain are up to 2.3 times increased risk of that injury becoming much more severe and much more chronic. Second question was, I get a healthy amount of sleep per night, approximately 7 to 9 hours sleep. So again, that question is focusing predominantly just on the quantity of sleep. We know also that the quality of sleep is important. And again, there's other questions that address the quality of sleep. But again, you know, we want on average, typically somewhere between that 7 to 9 hours of people having, 7 to 9 hours of sleep for people. Again, a systematic review found that individuals who report less than 7 hours of sleep per night have a 45% higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease and a 60% increased risk of experiencing psychological distress. Sort of speaks for itself that if we're not getting enough sleep, our overall physical health and mental health becomes more compromised, again, leading to lost time injuries, workers' comp claims. So again, if we can identify those early that might be struggling with sleep, give them the tools and resources and reduce that overall risk profile for your organisation is key there. The fourth question, or third question, I should say, is I will work until I'm burnt out rather than proactively take steps to prevent this. So again, if you're doing that quite frequently, according to a meta-analysis, those report higher likelihood of working until burnt out are 3 to 5 times more likely to experience severe psychological distress, including depression and anxiety disorders. Burnout has also been shown to increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and a major contributor to musculoskeletal problems. So again, if we can provide the tools and the resources to those individuals that are constantly working to a point of burnout, and again, from a business perspective, can you redesign work so that these individuals have a more manageable workload and attacking it from both a work design and a human factors perspective? There is significant cost reductions there. And again, if we're just looking purely at lost time injury, workers' comp claims and such there. So again, hopefully some of that has provided interesting insights to you in terms of why we measure some of these things within the Wellbeing Index. Again, if we identify it earlier, put in place interventions, what is the potential cost saving reduction when it comes to more costly interventions when it comes to lost time injury, absenteeism and workers' comp claims. And not to mention, again, we haven't really even looked into that, but in terms of retention, employee retention and turnover within businesses as well is significant in those factors.
That was actually a comment based on the previous section you were chatting about, was the increasing expectation to be on calls multiple, like past after hours, multiple times a week, which is exhausting and explains why so many RAs unexplained, and now more employees are quitting, retiring out of sheer exhaustion.
Yeah. Again, I mean, one of the other things we haven't covered off here today is this aging workforce as well, but also, people retiring from the work environment that we're in now. So again, I think with all aspects of wellbeing, there's things that businesses really need to look at and address when it comes to creating work environments that promote wellbeing, but also individuals taking accountability and control of their own health and well-being, and again, what parameters are they satisfied in working in, having a speak up culture and those sort of things. So again, these things aren't easy. They're not, quick solutions. Within workplaces, what we find is the more that we can talk about these insights when it comes to well-being, the more the culture changes. And the better it becomes for everyone. People that aren't talking about it are the ones that are losing and having that exodus of people. But having conversations regularly to check in, talk about well-being, helping at an individual level and an organisation level is key. I guess this flows on perfectly to our next slide. Is that once we have the data, what are the things that, how do we utilise that data? What purposes can it be used for? Again, I guess first and foremost, to measure and benchmark. So by understanding where you sit, I guess, as a business relative to, I guess, other industries and other businesses within your business will give you an insight on, I guess, your wellbeing culture. It helps you to benchmark, the individual challenges within business groups and sections, and help you to track those changes in time. I think something we talk about all the time with our Wellbeing Index, it's not designed to be linear. We shouldn't just see it continually rising. It should be very dynamic, and it's a case of paying attention to when things drop from where they usually are. That might give hints and clues as to things that might be going on for that group of people, and again, giving them the support that they need. As we spoke about before, trying to personalise interventions as much as possible. Again, often personalising interventions at a personal level can be quite challenging, but at a minimum, if you can try and even, cater to business groups and essentially, a blue collar to white collar segments of your business. Again, the challenge that they face can be very different, and we're going to talk about an example of that very shortly. But again, how do we support interventions that are rather personalised to that group and high risk groups? Again, what we spoke about previously, leadership accountability. So again, holding leaders accountable to their wellbeing KPIs. Trying to ingrain wellbeing as part of their management style. Again, have them proactively take part in some of these wellbeing initiatives as well. That again, leadership helps to create the culture, and if we can support the leaders in prioritising their health and wellbeing, they can then best be in a position to support others. And then lastly, continuous engagement. So again, moving beyond just a one-off engagement or initiative, doing a wellbeing week, tick the box, yep, well done everyone, but actually having a continuous process, thinking about what are the challenges people are going through at different times of the year and how can you support that, give them the tools and the resources, improve their health literacy, and see if those tools and resources are actually having a remarkable change within that business. Perfect. So I guess this brings us on to a client case study over the last 12 months. I guess this client had a number of different challenges. They had a very diverse workforce in terms of job demands. Again, a big section of white-collar workers, a big section of blue-collar workers. They had a very diverse cultural business as well. A large percentage of their employees, English wasn't their first language. They also, again, had a lot of challenges that a lot of you are facing in terms of lost time injuries and those sort of things, and wanted to get more proactive in switching from that reactive mindset, and rather than just tracking lost time injuries increasing over time, to actually how do we reduce that and identify where we can help to support people. So the solution that we created for them was a monthly based education session that was built into their weekly meetings. It was led by the leaders within that business, where they delivered a really small, concise bit of content, but it was really targeted. It was delivered and translated into multiple languages, so that those that English wasn't their first language, they were able to get value from that content. And then we used the Wellbeing Index to track improvements and identify the changes over time. Again, very pleasing to say over the course of 12 months, their Wellbeing Index score went from 64 to 82. huge change over the course of 12 months, an 18% increase overall there. You can see that their biggest change was across the nutrition and recovery pillars over there, up 15% across both of those. 12% increase in mindset and a 9% increase in movement outcomes as well. And I think more importantly, again, we don't have access to this data, but they've reported back to us that they have significantly reduced their lost time injuries and workers' comp claims over the last 12 months, which is reflective of this data and has led into that lag indicating data there. So again, I think the key thing is, how do we embed wellbeing into a company culture rather than treating it as a checkbox? Get leadership buy-in, create measurable KPIs as a business, and that leads to impact. Again, I guess a way to show what does this look like in action. Here we can look at their recovery pillar. If we look across the bottom there, it's Q1, Q2, Q3. We can see that recovery steadily increased across those first 3 quarters across their workforce. In Q4, the business decided to really look at improving that recovery pillar, particularly, again, some of the challenges that employees were facing around sleep. So again, across the course of that quarter, there was a lot of focus around sleep routines and shift work. So again, a bit more targeted at those in the blue collar operational parts of the business, how to regain control over their stress and managing overwhelm as they head into a busier period of their work cycle as well. And as you can see there, at the end of Q3, 72% of people were getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. So again, that quantity. This one's really concerning. 75% of people were experiencing difficulty in staying asleep. So even though they might be getting the 7 to 9 hours in bed, they're either struggling to go to sleep or waking frequently throughout the night. And again, we know that some of those challenges, particularly in shift workers, are there. With the interventions that we put in place across the quarter, by the end of the quarter, 91% were getting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and significant reduction in that waking part. So 25% were experiencing difficulty in staying asleep by the end. So a 50% reduction. So some huge important numbers there, but again, showing a really targeted approach, thinking about the challenges, delivering it in a way that's meaningful to the people to get value. Again, a significant result there in lowering overall risk for that organisation. I guess moving forward into 2025, again, this is an example of a client across the 4 pillars of performance and their overall wellbeing index score there. So again, identifying which groups might be having more challenges. So a lot of our interventions over the last 12 months have been focused in on that production and quality part of the business. We can see on a wellbeing perspective, that's the highest performing area across wellbeing within the business. So moving into 2025 with this particular client, we're starting to focus a lot more around the administration, management and warehousing parts of the business to support them in overcoming whatever challenges they might have for the year ahead. So again, by bringing awareness, delivering interventions, and then constantly looking at how can we support, what areas of support do people need, what are the greatest challenges that they have, we can really create targeted interventions that have meaningful impact to the individuals and to your business in terms of that real cost. So I guess to wrap up today, moving into 2025, what are the trends or priorities that you're seeing for your organisation? Do you have any further questions around some of the things we've gone through today? But what do you see as the big priorities for you and your role, and what the organisation are focusing in over 2025?
What are you guys focusing on at Better Being?
At Better Being? With our clients?
No, with your team.
With our team? Oh, look, again, everything we do with our team, we do with our clients as well. So it's probably a lovely little segue into this. Again, I love my memes. Workplace wellbeing, infinity and beyond. What are we seeing within the market, and what are we doing within our team? again, how do we maintain employee productivity and flexibility? One of the big things that we're seeing coming into 2025 is a shift to a 4-day work week. Again, it's not applicable in all industries. It might be applicable in some. So 100% pay for 80% of the time, maintaining 100% of the productivity. That's something that we've recently implemented this year within the business. It's working really, really well. Our productivity and activity has been amazing, and staff are reporting that they are feeling so much better. They have so much time to address life admin and to look after themselves and prioritise that wellbeing by having that extra day. So again, it's been really positive so far. We're doing it as a bit of a trial, and we'll see how we go from there. But across all industries, both in Australia and globally, there has been shown to have higher engagement, better mental health outcomes, and sustained productivity. So there's one to think about there. I guess broader, and as someone's already pointed out, is there's going to be a greater focus off the back of, again, a lot of those psychosocial risks into how we're moving into being more proactive in wellbeing rather than reactive in the strategies that we implement there. The third one, which I find really interesting, is organisations being financially accountable to wellbeing. So one of the things that people are seeing is wellbeing washing within organisations, where organisations say we value employee wellbeing, but aren't actually doing anything to be held accountable to that. Obviously, having a metric such as our Wellbeing Index is a great tool and strategy there, but we're actually seeing banks give loans to organisations based on them meeting certain ESG frameworks, and a part of that being employee wellbeing. So some organisations have to meet certain KPIs in terms of creating a wellbeing ambassador program that we're assisting them with. Some organisations have to conduct a certain amount of health consultation with their employees over the course of a period of time. If they don't meet those certain KPIs, there's financial implications to the organisation. So I think we're going to see a rise in that, where again, we're going to see wellbeing numbers reported into the boards. And again, that's going to create more emphasis there.
And is that what wellbeing washing is? Sorry, I've never heard that term.
So wellbeing washing is an organisation, it's similar to greenwashing. So an organisation saying we value your wellbeing, yet we'll do nothing to support you. We'll create really stressful, high workloads, and so again, it's the values but not the actions.
Yep.
Disconnect. So we're going to see organisations held a lot more accountable to wellbeing, so they can't just say we value it, but actually create quantifiable metrics that they're held accountable to. The next trend that we're seeing, and again, I think it's something we're working on here at Better Being, is utilising AI. Again, it's probably one of the biggest trends in the general workforce, but how can we create increased personalisation at an individual level and an organisational level to give organisations real-time feedback when it comes to monitoring and supporting employee health and wellbeing. And the last one, leadership accountability and training, as we spoke about, really key, important part of using that metrics. How do we support leaders, and are leaders being held accountable to the wellbeing of their teams? And again, moving from that reactive to proactive mindset of management. A lot of information I've just thrown. Again, whether you agree with any of these, what your thoughts are, whether you have more questions, what are maybe some of the things that you're seeing for the year ahead, would love to hear from you.
One of the questions, going back to your 4-day work week, is, are you operating with extended hours for those 4 days? Jess has heard that places are doing it, but moving to 10-hour days.
Yeah, so again, at the moment, we are keeping the days a little bit longer. Employees have the flexibility that if they can get the same work done in a shorter period of time, that's acceptable. And as I said, we're sort of trialling it to see what works in terms of, and I think this is the challenge for all organisations, is how do we help people in being their best self from a well-being perspective, but also meet outcomes as an organisation in productivity, that we don't want to move the dial too far to just everyone's happy and, loves each other and, has such great work-life, balance or whatever, that productivity suffers. But where do we find that sweet spot between productivity and well-being?
Tony has mentioned that their focus is leadership accountability. Driving a wellbeing program is difficult if the senior leader is not a prime supporter. The challenge is how the company becomes compliant with the legislation on the wellbeing program when no government agency is focused and dedicated to conducting compliance checks on companies.
Yeah, perfect. Again, I'm not across a lot of the compliance pieces when it comes to wellbeing and within the sector. I know that a lot of those things are increasing. Legislation's getting tighter. That if you can't produce a psychosocial risk assessment on the spot check, that there is implications, and those implications and fines and punishments are becoming a lot more severe. And again, as I said, that leadership change is definitely a very complicated piece. It's a hard piece. First part of change is how do we help support the leader in their health and wellbeing, and if they feel the benefits of better health and wellbeing, they're going to be more likely to encourage that within their workforce. So a lot of the training we do is how do we get the leader in the best possible shape that they're in, where they're thriving. And we know that then filters down and trickles down to the rest of the team, so that they lead very much from that wellbeing lens as well.
One final note has been from Page. Their big focus is on psychosocial safety, leadership training on navigating that legislation, shorter wellbeing workshops to gain higher attendance on the topic relevant to their area. That's awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've also, for everybody, I've shared the link to access the Wellbeing Index report in the comments as well. So if you want to explain a little bit more about that, Greg, and then I think that's about all time we have.
Yeah, perfect on the timing, and thank you, Christina, for all your help again today. You've been amazing. But yes, there's a free download there. If you scan the QR code or click the link in the chat section there, it will take you to our Wellbeing Index report for 2024. It shares a lot of that data that we've gone through today in terms of some of those trends. So again, I know I've thrown a lot of numbers and stats and facts at you today. If you want to digest that a little bit more, download that report, and hopefully, we'll start a conversation and get you thinking about wellbeing within your workplace. I guess sum up everything we've gone through today. First and foremost, data tells a story. So again, start paying attention to your wellbeing metrics, use it to guide action, and think about what are the challenges that you have and how you can overcome them. Secondly is that proactive always beats reactive. So start thinking about how you can address risks before they escalate. And then lastly, wellbeing is a business strategy. A thriving workforce leads to a thriving company. So again, if we can prioritise people's wellbeing, manage their productivity, we're going to create really great workplaces for people to be part of. Again, if you're wanting to have a chat, feel free to reach out. My details are on the screen as well. I'm more than happy to catch up and let you know any sort of insights and strategies with no obligation as to what that might be. Thank you for your time today, and wishing you all a healthy and high-performing workforce in 2025.
Thank you so much, Greg. Before I go, I just want to let you all know that today's session has been recorded, so I will absolutely upload that to our YouTube channel, our website. I will email a link to all of that to everybody that's registered today, as well as continue to share the link to the Wellbeing Index report and Greg and the whole Better Being team's details, so you can reach out whenever you need, as you can to Myosh. We're always around and we're always happy to help. So I hope you all gained some key insights from today's session. I know I did, and I'm very excited to implement some more key areas for 2025. Like Greg said, thank you all so much for sharing your time with us. We all know how valuable it is. So I will let you all go. And like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out. We're always around and happy to help.